body. Chapter 2, Dynasties 1 to 4. The pharaohs of the first three dynasties. In Upper Egypt, west of the river, stood a small town called Tini, a name which the Greeks converted into this, or Tehis, or Tehinus. It was the ancient metropolis of the 8th nome, and lying near to Abydos, it formed only a separate quarter of that celebrated city. It chose for its tutelary deity the warlike god Anhur, while at Abydos Osiris was worshipped. Both cities have now vanished, but their memory is preserved by the necropolis and the splendid sanctuaries which the pious faith of the Egyptians raised on the border of the desert at the place which the modern inhabitants of the country called by the Arabic name of Harabat el-Madfouni, Harabat the Sunken. Tini, which in the Roman times enjoyed a certain repute for its purple dyes, must anciently have been held in special honour by the inhabitants of the land, for under the sovereign of the 19th dynasty, the highest servants of the state, of pharaohs of the king's own race, were denoted by the title of King's Son of Tini, a distinction which elsewhere occurs only in the titles King's Son of Cush, or of the land of the Ethiopians, and King's Son of Heneb, that is the city of the moon, Elathiopolis. The high fame of this town rested beyond doubt on the received tradition that it had been the cradle of the first Egyptian king and the hereditary seat of his successors for 2 dynasties. The name of this first sovereign of ancient Egypt was Mena, the steadfast. And there's the symbol there. There's the whatever that is there. Our only knowledge of him is confined to a few statements of doubtful credit found in classical writings. He is said to have been the first lawgiver of Egypt, but to have corrupted the simple manners of the olden time, and that he replaced the frugal mode of life by royal pomp and sumptuous expense. To him also is ascribed the foundation of Memphis, the splendid capital of the old empire, after he had first diverted the Nile in order to gain a wide space for building the new city. By the construction of an enormous dike, that's embankment, right? The previous course of the river along the Libyan hills was cut off, and the bed thus left empty was forever filled up. Linat Bey, one of the most active improvers of modern Egypt, is convinced that the great dike of Koche is in all probability the same which Mena caused to be constructed 6,000 years ago. The Egyptians, like the other nations of antiquity, began the work of founding a city by building the temple which formed the centre of the future town. New sanctuaries erected later, occasionally the building of new quarters which surrounded the oldest temple, and finally formed with it a single great city. The names given to the several temples embraced likewise the dwelling places of the inhabitants which adjoined and belonged to it, and thus is explained the fact that the monuments mention the same town under the most different designations. The chief name of Mena's city was also that of the nome Imbuhat, or the White Wall. In general, it bore the title Menepher, the good place, which the Greeks altered to Memphis, the Copts to Memphi, and the Coptics to Memphi, and the cuneiform inscriptions render Mempi. The last trace of the old name is preserved in Tel El Month, the modern designation of a heap of ruins close to the former royal residence of the first pharaohs or kings. More really, it was called Ha-Nefer, the good appearance, or the Makhata, the land of the scales, and frequently by the sacred appellation of Ha-Ha-Ta, house of worship of Ptah, who often bears the additional title of Sekher or Sakari, traces of which seem to be preserved in the name of the modern village Saqqara or Saqqara, near the ancient city of Memphis. The wife of the god, a lion-headed goddess adorned with the sun's disk, bore the name of Sehet, whose son Nefer-Atmu or Hotep was the Asclepios of Egyptian mythology. All that now remains of the celebrated city consists of heaps of overthrown and shattered columns, altars and sculptures which once belonged to the temples of Memphis, and of a far extended line of mounds of debris. The temple of Ptah lay on the south side of the salt-encrusted plain which stretches between the Swine's Hill, Kum-il-Khanzeh, is it Kum-il-Khanzeh or Kum-il-Hanzeh, on the east of the little Arab village of El-Qasaria on the west. Its length lies from north to south, and the mighty statue of Ramses II shows where the splendid gate of the temple once stood. The former existence of the sacred lake of the north is proved by the inscription upon the statue. In the immediate neighbourhood of the village of Al-Qasaria, which means washpot, are shown the broken remains and columns of a temple, the inscriptions on which declare Ramses II to be its founder and builder. The chief access was from east to west, and it was built of polished blocks of granite and alabaster in honour of the divine Ptah. Judging from the writings of Abd el-Latif, an Arab physician of the 13th century, it would seem that in the Middle Ages the remains of the once great city of Memphis were still so well preserved that their materials and the perfection of their workmanship excited the admiration of the Arabs. And down the bottom it has a book you can look at. Looks like some French or something, translated by S.D. Sassy or Sassai, whatever that name is. The repeated excavation which had been undertaken in our day on the site of Memphis have given results hardly worth naming, for the immense masses of stone used in the building of the temples have been in a course of time transported to Cairo to supply the materials needed for the mosques, palaces and houses of the city of the caliphs. The high priests of Ptah appear to have distinguished themselves by the authority and influence, and even princes of the blood royal did not find it beneath their dignity to hold that office at Memphis. For example, Hamuas, the favourite son of Ramses II, who died early and gave many gifts to the gods of the temple and fulfilled the rules of the divine service. It was not until the decline and fall of the kingdom, and until Memphis and Thebes ceased to be the famous residences of the pharaohs, of the kings, that the authority of the high priests came gradually to an end. Along the margin of the desert, extending from Abu Roash as far as Maidum, lay the necropolis of Memphis, where were buried the contemporaries of the 3rd, 4th and 5th dynasties. Their memories have been kept alive by pictures and writings on the walls of the sacrificial chambers built over their tombs. In that obscure age when the symmetrical building of the pyramids and the well-executed design of the sepulchral chambers demanded skill and intelligence, the office of architect was the occupation of the noblest men at court, many of whom were either sons of grandsons or grandsons of the king. Great dignity also belonged to the nobleman who was honoured with the office of a prophet of the pyramid of Pharaoh. His duty was to praise the memory of the deceased king and to devote the godlike image of the sovereign to enduring remembrance. The honour of the office was mentioned in the prophet's own tomb and was associated with the name of his deified king. The Memphis tombs tell much concerning the customs of Pharaoh and his court. The sovereign bears the official title of king of the upper and lower country. He is also called Pharaoh, the great house, better known perhaps under the Hebrew equivalent of Pharaoh. The people honoured him as Lord, Neb, and God, Netta. At sight of him, every native prostrated himself and touched the ground with his nose. Okay, so that's where it originated from, all your Islamic what do you call it? Prostrating. It probably came from there. And it was an especial favour if the commander of his lord permitted him only to kiss his knee. He was spoken of as His Majesty, and briefly but not less respectfully by a word equivalent to the German man. Maybe. At the court of Pharaoh, with regard to attendance on the sovereignty and the sovereign, order, rank and time were exactly defined, as well for nobles of the purest descent as for the mass of busy servants. Not only did the splendour of his birth secure for the nobleman dignity and authority in the eyes of the people, but far greater weight was given to prudent wisdom, noble culture, and the brightness of virtue. Good service was rewarded with honours and gifts, the nobleman receiving such titles as Hereditary Highness, Upa, or Intimate Friend, Sema Uat. The management and service of the court, as well as the administration of the country, was conducted under Pharaoh's direction by the governor and bailiff, and a countless host of scribes, while the duties of personal attendance upon the king were performed by inferior officials controlled by the high steward. The boy, distinguished by early intelligence and he gave good promise for the future, was associated with the king's children as their companion in play and lessons, while a guardian of noble family superintended the house of the king's children, on whom devolved heavy responsibility for the bodily health, for the education and discipline of the royal children. The queen and the other ladies of the royal family were for the most part honoured with the sacred dignity of prophetess of the goddesses Hathor and Nit, or Neat. They lived in the women's houses, guarded by free men chosen by the king, and it was permitted to the princesses to ally themselves in marriage with some of the great nobles. The duty of attending to the buildings and all kinds of work in stone belonged to skilled persons of the noble class. In the caverns of the mountains of Turah, opposite to Memphis, they quarried limestone for building the royal pyramids and tombs and for the artistic work of the sarcophagi and columns, or they resorted to the southern region to hew out the harsh granite from the Red Mountain behind the city of Aswan, and constructed rafts for the conveyance of the vast masses of stone to the lower country in the favourable season of the inundation. The dreaded band of taskmasters was set over the wretched people, who were urged to speedy work more by the punishment of the stick than by words of warning. The inhabitants of the country in the extensive environs of the towns or in the villages of the open plain were kept in order by governors of nomes. The judges enforced strict obedience to the written law and administered justice to the oppressed, whose complaints it was the duty of the king's deputies to hear. The warlike host of young soldiers, Mesha, consisting of infantry, whom the master of the armoury equipped with clubs and axes, spears and bows and arrows, were commanded by experienced generals. It was the duty of the commander-in-chief to plan the campaign, dispose the troops, and go out to war with his soldiers. Of a more peaceful kind was the celebrated office of the teachers of mysteries, Her-Se-Shta, for they were the possessors of all hidden wisdom in those ancient times. The mystery teachers of heaven looked upwards, and as wise astronomers explained the ever-changing course of the stars. The mystery teachers of all lands contemplated the nature of earthly things, and appeared to have been the geographers of the ancient world. The mystery teachers of the depth, if we are not mistaken, were the possessors of knowledge of that which the earth conceals in its depths, and were initiated into the peculiar nature of the soil. Others, mystery teachers of the secret word, wrote books on subject of deep thought, whilst the mystery teachers of the sacred language devoted themselves to the special knowledge of the Egyptian tongue. Most frequently of all we meet with the mystery teachers of Pharaoh the king, or of all the commands of Pharaoh the king, wise men who held the position of private secretaries to their master. Next to them we read of mystery teachers who examined words, without doubt either learned men of letter or judges, who listened to complaints and compared the evidence of the witnesses. The scribes were divided into many branches according to their position and business, in obedience to the commands of their master. They either wrote the events of his domestic life or accurately recorded his income and expenditure and kept his books in good order. So they're like his accountants, right? For a scribe of talent, the way was open to the highest honours. The mass of servants and skilled workmen were also divided into fixed orders and gradations. In this way, the welfare of the court and country was secured by the adjustment of the individual members. Everyone maintained his place according to his own worth, and the machinery of the state ran in the regular course, being set in motion by the all-powerful will of Pharaoh or the king. Blind obedience was the oil which caused the harmonious working of the whole. And this great world, buried in its deep desert grave for more than 6,000 years, is now beginning to wake up out of its long sleep, like the briar rose in the legend, and to relate in childishly simple language its long past history and home state. To return to King Mena. After conducting a campaign against the Libyans, he was seized and devoured by a crocodile. Such is the story of the ancients. Was Set, the lord of the horrid water monsters, embittered with envious hatred against the founder of the most ancient state, The names alone of the successors of the first pharaoh or king are preserved in the tablets of Saqqara and Abydos and harmonized to some extent with the Turin papyrus, which when completed contained the names of the same kings, together with the length of their reigns in a similar order. From a merely superficial examination, as footnote there, see Tables of Kings, page 29. Maybe it's something in Latin, mate. In sequence or something, I'm not really sure. It is clear that with the exception of 2 or 3 names toward the end of the Third Dynasty, they are radically different from those of the pharaohs or kings who succeeded them. For the most part, the older one suggests the ideas of strength and terror. Thus, Mena is the constant, Tita the smiter, Ka Ko, the bull of bulls, Senta the terrible, Hunni the hewer. It is not until the 22nd name on the monumental list that the gods Amen, Sebek, or Tehuri become incorporated into the royal cartouche, while from henceforth the sign of the god King Ra is paraded in a suitable place of honour in the upper space. Among the rulers of the most ancient kingdom, Neferkari, perfect through Sakari, is the only one whose name plainly preserves the remembrance of a deity. But then the question naturally arises, how was it that a king of Tini, the capital of Upper Egypt, gave himself a name which, by the presence of the divine Sakari at Memphis, suggests the capital of Lower Egypt? However, this may be one thing is certain, that Mena laid the foundation of this future metropolis, and that the descendants of his house held their court at Memphis, not at Tini. Unfortunately, the monuments are silent until the time of Seneferu, Dynasty 3, and the information concerning the most ancient rulers of Egypt comes only from the fragment of Manetho and from Greek stories of doubtful veracity. Mena's son and successor Tita built the royal palace in Memphis and wrote, wonderful as it may sound, a work on anatomy, for he was a physician. The monuments are silent concerning this physician king, but a papyrus roll of the most remote age, bought in Thebes by Ebers, tells in archaic language that when King Tita sat on the throne, a prescription for making the hair grow was much commended. More important than this information is the testimony that the writings of the pharaohs or kings on medical subjects reached back as far as the First Dynasty. With regard to the laws of the kingdom, Ba-in-Netta, who had apparently no sons, enacted as a standing rule forever that women should inherit the throne. The working of this new custom had important consequences in the establishment of many a dynasty, either when the queen, after the death of her husband, took the reins of government or stepped into the place of her youthful son, or when the daughter and heiress of a deceased pharaoh who had no sons gave her hand to a foreign husband. According to the ancient custom, the mother's pedigree had great weight in the order of inheritance, because it gave an unconditional claim of right to the son as the true heir of the father of his mother. The husband of a royal heiress appeared as a king in name only, but devolved on the son of such a marriage to maintain his full right to the throne and sceptre by virtue of his material descent. If a pharaoh married the daughter of a noble family, not of royal race, the offspring of the union, as appears from many occurrences in the history of the kingdom, had not equal rights with the true royal children. The father of the new pharaoh was honoured by the title of father of the divine one, Tefnetta, while the mother was called mother of the king, Mutsutin. In the majority of cases, the succession of the dynasties was determined by the union of new suitors with heiresses of the heiresses of the blood royal, whether the chosen husbands could trace their pedigree back to royal ancestors or not. Under the rule of Neferkara, tradition relates that the waters of the Nile suddenly assumed for 11 days the taste of honey. We know nothing of Sekar but the strange tradition which says he was 5 cubits in height and 3 in breadth. Under Neterophes, the first king of the Third Dynasty, the tribes of Libya revolted against the Egyptian masters and Pharaoh The king only succeeded in subduing them when the help of the gods, the moon appeared to grow of a gigantic size, which threw terror into the ranks of the enemy. The heir of this king, Tasothros, was skilled in the art of healing sickness and injuries to the body, and on account of this wisdom, the title of God of Healing was given him. He was also diligent in other matters, and was skilled in the art of erecting solid masses of building in well-hewn stone. Also, he gave instruction in the painting of the written characters for the benefit of people expert in writing. The first of the monumental kings was Sneferu, who makes good. A number of stones carved during his lifetime mention him. With Sneferu first appears the custom of adding to the king's own name another and sacred one, besides 3 high-sounding titles. Without distinguishing the individual, the first title was that of Horus, who dispensed his life and prosperity, the second lord of the double diadem, and the third the image of the golden Horus, conqueror of his opponent. After each king's name was placed that of his pyramid to distinguish him, and as a pledge of lasting fame. It was a pious custom whenever the king or a great noble was mentioned to add immediately after his name, life, health, and strength be to him. So that would probably be something like peace be upon him, right? Islam uses, right? But maybe vastly differently. Similarity, right? Similar but not same, maybe. On steep wall of rock in the Wadi Magara, where in the very ancient caverns the traces of the miner may easily be recognised, Sneferu appears as a warrior with a mighty club striking a vanquished enemy to the ground. The inscription engraved beside the picture mentions him clearly by name with the title of vanquisher of a foreign people. The land, which formerly yielded copper ore and blue and green precious stones, seems to have been a possession much coveted by the rulers of Kemet. See page 5. Or Kemet, and it was without doubt Sneferu who gained possession of this mountainous peninsula by a short sea passage from Egypt, or by a longer journey on the backs of asses. That'd be like donkeys or something like that. Maybe rams or something, It depends. Yeah, probably we'd go with the donkey thing. Maybe. Not too sure on that one. Because Tacitus, Moses saw a whole lot of asses coming down this hill, and that's how he discovered water. But it wasn't, as we thought, it wasn't what we thought, donkeys. It was rams or something like that. Yeah, okay, and it continues. Okay, Hathor was worshipped as the protectress of the land of Mafkat, and to the sparrowhawk of Sopt, the lord of the east. And there's more there. And the names in the order of the pharaohs of the 4th and 5th dynasties, the tablets of Abydos and Saqqara, and term papyrus may together be considered as approximating to the truth. Okay, basically giving that list correctly, I suppose. Okay, there's lots and lots of information that follows. Plan of the pyramids and tomb of, can't see that name. Looks like, you can't see it. It's really hard to see. The pharaohs of the 5th and 6th dynasties. And information on all of them. Be good to read if you're a ancient Egyptian or Kemet history buff, or you're of that religious persuasion, ancient Kemet, etc. Chapter 4, Dynasty 12, or the 12th Dynasty. Manetho states that the princes of the 12th dynasty were of Theban origin, which is more than probable since the Antefs and Mentuhoteps have left memorials of themselves in that city. Okay, it was this here. Amini, the head of the family, relates the incidents of his life as follows. Okay, no mention yet of the Hyksos. Okay, we could probably go look at the index if it has one to see if there's any mention there. Jump ahead here. Okay, these are adverts for other books apparently, by the looks of it. Table of the ancient Egyptian calendar. Month. Tehuti. Interesting. Okay, there's the index there, so it's got something about Tacitus. What are we looking for? We're looking for the Hyksos. Okay. 104. $48. 120. The Semites in Egypt. Okay, chapter 6, the Hyksos. The name of Hyksos, which comes down from the days of Manetho, deserves very special attention, and the monuments confirm what we know of the lost book of that historian. Quoting him, Josephus says, there was a king called Timaeus, variation Timaeus. In his reign, I know not for what reason, God was unfavourable, and a people of inglorious origin from the regions of the east suddenly attacked the land, of which they took possession easily and without a struggle. They overthrew those who ruled in it, burned down the cities, and laid waste the sanctuaries of the gods. They ill-treated all the inhabitants, for they put some to the sword, and carried others into captivity with their wives and children. Then they made one of themselves king, whose name was Salatus. Maybe there's various names of that, versions of that. Saltus, Silatus, in the list, Saites. He fixed his residence at Memphis, collected the taxes from the upper and lower country, and placed garrisons in the most suitable places. But he especially fortified the eastern frontiers, for he foresaw that the Assyrians, who were then the most powerful people, would endeavour to make an attack on his kingdom. Yeah, they were like real warrior-like and feared in those days, right? March, and you'd think, because you'd hear you think they'd be stomping and all that sort of stuff, you know. Here they come, that sort of stuff. Yeah, because there's hordes and hordes of them, right? Yeah, they're the most feared, even throughout the scriptures. Yeah. History as well, mainly, more. Because they used to probably chop people's heads off and put them on a wall, like you have the animals. The hunters put the head as monuments, as monuments on their wall, and their lodges, that sort of thing. Okay. When he had found in the Setharite Nome a city very conveniently situated to the east of the Berber state arm of the Nile. On account of an old religious legend, it was called Avaris. He extended it, fortified it with very strong walls, and placed in it a garrison of 240,000 heavily armed troops. Thither he betook himself in summer, partly to watch over the distribution of provisions and the counting out of the pay to his army, and partly to inspire the foreigners with fear by making his army perform military exercises. He died after he had reigned 19 years. His successor, by name Benon, reigned 44 years. And then after him, these other ones followed. Last of all, Ameth or Assis. These 6 were the first kings. They carried out uninterrupted war with a view to destroy the land of Egypt, even to extermination. The whole people bore the name of Hyksos, that is, king shepherds, commonly called shepherd kings. Well, apparently, in the last video I did, Manetho was actually wrong. They were more like pillagers, robbers, thieves. For Hike is the holy language, signifies a king, and Sos in the dialect of the people, shepherd or shepherds. Thus combined they form Hyksos. Some think they were Arabs. Now the word Sos corresponds exactly to the Old Egyptian Shasu, hence they have been identified with the Hak Shasu Bidawi. Their old national name in the course of time obtained in the popular language the secondary sense of shepherds. That is, a nomad people who followed the occupation of rearing cattle, which has at all times formed the sole wealth of the inhabitants of the desert. If the objection should be raised that the monuments as yet discovered pass over the name of Hyksos in silence, it must be remembered that by far the greater number of contemporary monuments have completely disappeared from off the Egyptian soil. Meanwhile, it may well be to compare the information existing in the few extant inscriptions with the accounts of Greek tradition. Manetho's name, Kios, is undoubtedly in complete agreement with the supposed Egyptian word Hak Shasu, king of the Arabs, wanderers or shepherds. Yeah, that's what it means, not Muslims or anything like that, or Mohammedans. It is not therefore necessary to maintain that they invented for themselves and assumed it on account of their office. Rather, it is probable that the Egyptians, after the final expulsion of the Semitic tyrants, formed the nickname Hak Shasu as a contemptuous expression for those princes who, for several centuries, had regarded themselves as the legitimate kings of Egypt.